If you don't know who Gensler is the largest architecture firm in the world. We have 30 some odd offices around the globe, most of them here in the US, but a lot in Asia, a few in Europe. And we haven't grown as an architecture firm by running out and putting an office somewhere and working to be successful. We've grown because our clients have asked us to go to all of these different places because they've been doing business there. And so, we have, in the big scheme of things, 5,500 employees. For an architecture firm, pure architecture is big. Now, if you do other things like engineering and project management and all different kinds of consulting, you can get much, much bigger. But in architecture, it's the largest. My role at Gensler is to look at the technologies that are impacting or have the potential to impact our world, and to understand them to the point where I can provide us with a viewpoint on how we need to adapt in order to be part of that. And so as part of that role, I engage external partners. I develop new technology initiatives within the firm. And all of this is around this idea of, the future and the way that we've been pursuing the future and the way that I personally grew up being messaged on the future. And it was that this was the future that we were all going to have. That, all of this technology that was being dreamed of at that point was going to turn our world into something like this, or something like this. Growing up, waking up in the morning, watching these cartoons and all of this kind of fantastic stuff about how our lives were going to fundamentally change because of technology. Popular science dripping on us all the time about, these what we call now mixed-use developments, where you would live, work, and play, and have all of these things happen in one place, and everything was convenience. And it was drilled down to the children. It wasn't just, the dreamers at the top level, the scientists theorizing that things were going to happen. It was down to the kids, and the kids being sold this message about what the future was going to be. These were lofty, aspirational things back then. But where's my jetpack? I can show you robots. This robot by Greg Lynn. Greg Lynn's actually an architect. And his understanding of place is what gave him the position to be able to say, wow, here is where an opportunity is for me to employ this technology. I can show you flying cars. Right? There was a kind of an open competition recently that Uber held for their Elevate concept, which was all about creating kind of short-run, flying shuttle services within cities. And we put a big team together, and we evaluated what it was, and we evaluated what the throughput could be, and it was a very, very interesting exercise. And it was very eye-opening from the sense that we've still got people pursuing these ideals that we established the goals for a very long time ago. And I can show you autonomous vehicles. It's funny thing, there was a study that was done, results released just 2 weeks ago, I think, where people were surveyed, and from the survey group, 70% of the people that responded said they did not trust autonomous vehicles. Clearly, it's got some way to go. But again, technologies that were promised back in our first slide that are just now starting to mature into things that are real. We've gone from dreaming about what the future could be to executing on its promise. In the new millennium, dreaming has become a lot more practical. We're no longer pursuing these things that that are way far out there, where we're actually engaging in making them happen. We're not, theorizing that in the future we're going to be colonizing Mars. We're actually working on it now. We're planning it. The private sector is doing it. We're not imagining that or forecasting that we can raise the average life expectancy. I mean, by the year 2020, women will be up to 88. This is average life expectancy, and men to 81. And this is based on the trend that's been recorded, where we're already in a place that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was, bordering on fantasy. And so in this reality, where does the architect play his role? It was, the three presentations before me, great presentations. The last two were all about, this technology and this vision and the way that we're using AR, but none of them touched on place. It was AR in the abstract. And it's not a criticism, it's just the reality of sometimes the way that we develop solutions in AR. Because AR has no meaning unless it has context. And that car in the living room, that's great. It's a great demonstration of that app. But if we were to make it beyond a sales gimmick, if we were going to take it into a place where it's actually a productive thing in our world, it's got to be more than that. We design the places where these technologies are actually being invented, where they're being developed. The NVIDIA campus, which is very close to here, is a Gensler design. And we worked really close with everybody in that organization to leverage all of the advanced visualization technologies to allow us to understand those places in a better way, but also, just maybe, to plan the way that this space would evolve once these technologies became mature. We're doing our part as architects, as designers, in really delivering on that promise of the future, technology's promise of the future. Because it's not going to happen without the involvement, without the collaboration with architects. There's so much going on in the world right now. Does anybody know who Misty is? Basically an open source robotics platform that's going to allow people to develop products for and with robots without having to develop the robot platform in the first place. It's like a trampoline into robotics for people that have ideas about what things could be, but they don't have the resources to get to the ground floor. In all of this, our awareness of what's going on is what gives us the opportunity to develop a position, to understand where it is that we fit in and how it is that we fit in. And we're doing it with a lot of amazing partners. We're collaborating with these partners. We're testing their technologies. We are helping them understand the way that our contribution works into the mix of making these things successful. Because AR cannot be successful on its own through a device. The environment has to support its success. Otherwise, it can only be as successful as it can make itself be. And AR is one thing, and I've talked in the past a lot about AI. Because AI is part of that landscape. For AR to reach its full potential, AI is going to be part of the picture. The tools, the enhanced processes, the optimization. AI in some form has already made its way into a lot of our homes. It is an extremely relevant part of the way that we're engaging space now in many lives. And again, it's our clients that are pioneering the work into these spaces. We're at the place where technology that practical dreaming and place, they converge and they create what's actually going to happen. And so I get this question a lot because I'm engaged with these people a lot is, well, for architecture, and I imagine this rings true for almost any profession, but for architecture, it's like, what is AI going to do to us? Because there are a lot of tools that are coming on the market that are allowing a lot of the processes, a lot of the knowns in architecture to be automated. Space planning. And what I tell them is that AI is not going to replace the architect. AI is not going to replace the person. AI is going to allow the designer to move his efforts from the known parts of the business, from the execution parts of the business, into the more inspirational parts of their craft. That they can focus more on ideas and concepts that are not known and allow the tools based on AI to do the work that they already know they can do. It's the same with anything. A chisel in the hands of a journeyman will yield you very different results in the hands of an artisan. And that's the way we have to look at AI tools and processes. This is probably the best this device has ever looked. We tried really hard to make it sexy, to make it pretty, to make it acceptable. And this is years ago, and we're still dealing with the impact that this had. We're still managing the consequences of what this tried to do. It was well-intentioned, but it didn't take into account a lot of those human details that make us challenged. Because personally, I think these devices are great, but I don't see myself wearing one right now, walking around the office for 8 hours and being productive right now. But the work that's being done right now with these devices is extremely important. Because at one point, these devices were seen as strange. The idea that you would strap something mechanical to your person was seen as something strange. Just like these devices were seen as something strange. And wrapping it back to architecture, these devices influence the way that we designed offices. Their adjacencies, the things we had to put there to support them, file cabinets, paper records, all of these things. This technology had a direct impact on the way that architecture had to perform, what they had to deliver. And when this device came online, it had a direct impact on those spaces once again. Same space. But now, electronic records, more open space. Technology gains its most impactful place, its most impactful role in the built environment. You don't do it in the abstract. You're not out there in space with AR. It happens in a place. And it's with more than just itself as the only technology, right? It's got to be supported by the environment. Now, this picture I took 2:30 p.m. on Thursday last week. So this is after lunch, quite a bit after lunch. So you would expect that people are back at their desks. But you'll notice that there's a lot of dark screens in this picture. There's a lot of people missing from these desks, and there are people that are supposed to be sitting there. It's because they're no longer working the way that we expect them to work. The change, the technology, the impact that technology is having on our environments, on our productivity environments, is significant because they can now, with mobility, work in any of the touchdown spaces. They can work out on the plaza. They can work in any one of the conference rooms if they need to. The current mode of workplace that we're implementing right now is already becoming outdated. And with technologies like AR, it's happening at a faster and faster pace. And going back to the need for other things to be part of this story is, smart buildings, the Internet of Things, what we call spatial intelligence, the ability for an environment to be a productive part of the way that it functions through the use of technology. Systems that allow a building to know how efficient it is, how efficiently it's being used in every context, not just its resources, not just its draw, but also the people and the occupants, what they're doing, how they're using the space, which spaces are busiest, and then what they can contribute back into the space to allow people to extract more productivity from it. Where we can take, very, very analog places and outfit them with sensors, take the information that's already been created by existing systems within those spaces, and create a data pipeline to a device that allows a user through that device to gain a heightened level of productivity, a heightened level of understanding, a heightened level of performance from the environment they're inhabiting. To connect all of the users in AR together so that you know who doesn't want to be disturbed, where I can get some information about what's going on later on in this space, what's going on between people, and still allow people to have their anonymity if they so choose. Those smart spaces that we're creating from really dumb places, not their function, but their artifacts, their architecture. We are taking technology and adding it to a space that has no technology, and through AR, IoT, spatial intelligence, AI, making them perform at a heightened level so that we take a lot of these smart spaces, we put them together, we turn them into smart districts. We take those smart districts together and we turn them into smart cities. And all of them connected become part of the delivery of technology's promise of the future. It's really strange to look to a profession that's hundreds of years old and ask or understand or even believe that they are part of our future. But the reality is, architecture is where the rubber meets the road. And if you're developing for AR and you don't have an architecture partner, then you're working at a disadvantage because you're missing out on what they've known and what they've been working on and the way that they understand the environment. And not to use it as a crutch, but to use it as a foundation for moving AR forward. So that in the not too distant future, we can all get our jetpacks. Thanks.
So we have about a minute for questions. If there are some in the audience, happy to pick on some.
Happy to be blinded by the light?
Yeah, blinded by the light. If anybody want to raise their hands, otherwise through Slido.
I am right on
questions.
Awesome.
Come on.
No, we're good. Believe me. If you don't want to, I'll be around if you want to ask me questions later.
I want to point out something else. Your talk last year was just as good as this one, and very different. So if you don't have any questions, go home, go check up YouTube, and look at
last year's talk.
Look at last year's talk.
All right. Thanks. Guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Cheers. Cheers.